So Omori, an indie psychological horror game that has so much love and care put into it. Today I'm going to go over it and give you guys a big review. We are going to go over development, visuals, sound design, and most importantly, story. Remember in this review that I took the route where you open the door for Kel in the second real world section and not the Omori route. So with that said, let's start off with the game was developed in around 6.5 years by Omori and a couple other people. It was originally going to be a comic book instead of a game, which you can sort of tell throughout the game. But in 2014, they released a Kickstarter to fund the game, which got a whole bunch of money. They planned to release it in 2015, but if you know how long that would take, definitely not going to hit that, which it didn't, because it would release a full 6 years later. They worked with some of their friends over at Space Boyfriend and Slime Girls, and they both have bosses in the game, which I find pretty cool. But the game would finally release in Christmas 2020, and it would later release on console in 2021. Now let's get into the gameplay in Omori is honestly the worst part about the game. It's basically just an average RPG game with one new thing, the emotions, which is a pretty cool system, but not enough to say the gameplay, unfortunately. Most of the gameplay just consists of this. Yes, the emotions and the energy system add to it, but again, it's not enough to save the gameplay. And I wouldn't be so harsh on it if the game didn't put such an emphasis on it. For some reason, they make you fight these extremely difficult boss fights, taking me hours upon hours to beat. If they made it extremely easy, then I wouldn't mind at all. The story is by far the best part of this game. Why not let us experience it, and why make us go through incredibly difficult boss fights when the gameplay sucks? Some of the enemies also just, you randomly fight them and they're super powerful, but that's one of the only bad parts about this game. This game is extremely good. So now let's get on to So this game's visuals are amazing. Everything in this game, from the art style, the empty killer of Omori showing how empty he actually is, with him just wearing black all the time, his soul is empty, he has no soul. He just leads everyone, he has nothing, feels nothing, just kind of like Sunny does when he projects himself onto him in headspace, because he doesn't speak, he just leads everyone, and that's only one of the things that they are able to do with the colors in this game. They also have amazing usage of colors with the different environments. Headspace is super happy with vibrant colors, but the colors kind of feel like too much. It almost feels fake in a way. It feels like there's only happiness in this area, which is the point of Headspace. Then there's the color usage in White Space. It feels a bit boring, empty, nothing there. Like you've seen everything after the first 5 minutes, but it gives off the sense of familiarity. You don't feel in danger, you feel safe. This exactly contradicts Black Space, which makes you feel unsafe and danger. It uses fear of the unknown, which is only boosted by the many doors that you have to go through and all of the different worlds that are all pretty weird. With my prediction, they're all scrap parts of Headspace, but you continue going through these mysterious doors until you reach the next area, and I don't know what exactly to call the next space, but it's red with hints of black in it, and it exerts a sense of danger that makes you worried. The real world is really basic with its colors, which is to be expected since it's supposed to replicate real life. But there is some truly great visual storytelling towards the ending, especially when Omori is running down the long, dark, rainy road that gives a sense of reflection. And there is Sunny and Mari's duet towards the end of the game, which is probably the best scene in the game, and the entire scene has no dialogue, just the visual and music. There's also some truly great shots. Almost every cutscene in this game, though, has amazing shots. Again, that scene I said was the best one earlier has a lot of really good shots. Also, every shot in the White Space cutscenes are just amazing. It uses visuals to its advantage, and it also has some creative ways it tells the story with the visuals, with the photographs, looking through like the photo album and stuff like that. It's a really cool way to show what the past was, and there's a scene towards the end I won't spoil right now, but it uses photographs to its advantage, definitely. And that's all I really have to say about the visuals right now. They're really good, but now let's get into The sound design in Omori is amazing. Let's put the soundtrack to the side for a bit. We'll get to that later, but the sound design, from the sound of everybody taking a picture when you tag somebody, from the sound of ambience while cutting through spiderwebs and vast forests, while the faint piano playing as Omori remembers Mari, is just every sound made in this game is perfect. But now let's talk about the music in this game. It's amazing. Like, one of the best OST in gaming's type amazing. All the tracks fit into the game so well, and on top of that, the songs are super good themselves. So let's go through some of the highlights of the soundtrack. First off, Title is an amazing song for the starting of the game, and when you first hear it, that's all it is, the title song of the game. And when you listen to it after beating the game, it's super sad, as it is played multiple times throughout the game to express Sunny's guilt and how much he misses his sister, and how she is always there in some way in his life, in Headspace, in the real world. By Your Side is a perfect representation of Headspace, the name symbolizing how his friends are always there and how his guilt is always there too. At the same time, the song is played when we first meet Mari in the game. The sound gives this friendly vibe that perfectly represents Headspace's colorful and nice vibe. Trees is also a perfect atmospheric song. It makes you calm. It feels peaceful, just what this area is. Photographs is a perfect song for these mysterious white space scenes. It gives a sense of sadness and fear at the same time. A Home for Flower Empty gives this feeling of emptiness and sadness. I Just Love the 50s gives a sense of camaraderie between the group, with this end of adventure sound as it fits perfectly as it plays after you just beat probably the hardest mandatory boss in the game, and two characters' stories seemingly came to a semi-happy close. Lost Library gives this calming but confusing vibe of this little area in the game. It's dark, mysterious, but you don't feel any danger. Dear Little Brother is an amazing song, as it is one of, if not the first time we see Mari's spirit, and it is a song, and the song itself is a spin on By Your Side, which I mentioned earlier. Here We Are Together Again is a song that gives you a sound that gives off a reflective feel, which is fitting for the scene. Your Catastrophes is an amazing song to play over the Basil boss fight. It gives an uneasy vibe, which is so fitting for the scene and the boss fight. It is two friends who did something pretty horrible trying to cope with that. The song Omori is easily the best one in this game. The boss is so great, how it uses violin only, as that is Sunny's instrument. And it's also perfect for the clash between Sunny and Omori, as he is essentially fighting himself. And the song perfectly conveys that. I will talk more about this scene when we get to it, which with the scene it is in the story set. Also, Sunny and Mari's duet song is amazing. It plays over my favorite scene in the game, which I've mentioned multiple times. I will also get to that when we get into the story section. Those aren't the only good songs in the game, those are just the most notable. The music in this game is just amazing, probably my favorite gaming soundtrack with how it can make you feel and how it's used. So that's an amazing part of the game. Now let's get to the greatest part of this game, So this is going to be a very long section. I'm going to go through the story and add my little kind of commentary over it. So let's get into this. In this game, you play as a boy named Omori and his friends while they get into all these wacky shenanigans in this other world called Headspace. Everything is happy, funny, fun times until strangely his friend Basil begins acting a bit weird, and he mutters the words Mari, who is Omori's sister, before the game flashes to a broken violin at the bottom of the stairs. And Omori is back at the area where the game says he has lived for as long as he has remembered, until the game flashes to a boy named Sunny. This is where you'll probably be able to piece together that the entire Headspace world, was created in Sunny's head as a form of escaping his life. Some things to note that happened here are while Sunny walks down the stairs, he gets really scared, and a lot of hands begin appearing, one that comes behind him, and it seems to want to push him. When it does, we get the first of many fights with this thing called something. Sunny learns to calm him down and the thing disappears. Sunny seems to have a fear of stairs, which you will learn why later on, but that's the only really notable thing that happens in this section. So Sunny returns to Headspace once again. In Headspace, Basil is gone and Omori and his friends look for him until Sunny wakes up again. His friend Kel is knocking at the door and he asks you to come outside and hang out. I know there's a different route to the game where if you don't open the door, but I opened the door. As from what I heard, you do a lot more Headspace if you open the door, and I'm not the biggest fan of Headspace. As you probably noticed, I haven't really talked about it that much, and it's just a whole bunch of gameplay, not much story, so I don't really like it. Anyway, I open the door for Kel, and Sunny and Kel, you learn that Sunny has not been outside for 4 years, just escaping reality and headspace. You meet up with Basil at the park, and Aubrey shows up with some of her friends that are barely in headspace, like you kind of find them at the park. And you learn that Aubrey is not like how she was in headspace in real life, because in real life she sucked. But it seems like it wasn't always like that, with some comments from Kel about how they used to be friends, which is probably why she is nice in headspace. And because Sunny hasn't been out for 4 years, he didn't know that she's like this now. Anyway, Aubrey steals Basil's photo album, so Kel and Sunny tell him that they'll get it back. After some running around, they learn Aubrey is at church. Kel and Sunny go there, and after we learn one of the reasons Sunny has put himself into headspace when Aubrey accuses them of not being there when Mari died. Now we know why the friend group is all messed up and why Sunny has attempted to escape. As we know from in Headspace, Mari is his older sister. We also know that you never do any gameplay with Amari in Headspace, as she's always at the picnic basket, which is the safest spot out of all the characters. We also know why Aubrey is like this now. She blames her old friends for not comforting her when she needed them most. After Kel and Sunny leave, they see her put the photo album in the trash. Kel retrieves it and gives it back to Basil, and Kel reveals that Sunny is moving to Basil. Basil is extremely sad and storms off. Sunny follows him, and Basil pleads for Sunny not to leave him, which is a request he does not follow, going back home where there is weird black things all over the place. He heads upstairs and begins to get very scared, representing the spider legs on screen that appear whenever he does or is about to do something he is scared to do. When he gets to the top, he sees a ghost version of Mari who just disappears before the spider thing attacks him. Sunny learns to focus and the spider disappears. Sunny goes to bed and enters headspace again. Nothing of note happens until after you beat the sweetheart boss fight and a giant hole opens up on stage. If you don't jump down it, Omori and his friends will start falling, and everybody except for Omori end up freezing midair. When he reaches the bottom, there's a dark library that has certain books that are about Sunny's memory. We learn a lot of things about him from his memories. Most of them, Omori looks through a hole in the wall and sees Basil, who has been missing from headspace. Basil looks back, and his eye is red with something reflects off of it. The screen shows a key taped to something with the words "Don't forget" in the toy box. This also comes up later. The game cuts to Sunny and Kel is knocking on his door. When he opens it, Kel reminds him that his brother Hiro is coming home for summer. He needs to run some errands for him. After her words, we learn that Basil is missing, so Kel and Omori go to find him. They look around for a bit before finding him at their old hangout spot. Kel mentions the past when Aubrey breaks down into tears and her friends leave. She then pushes Basil into water where Sunny jumps in to save him, only for him not to know how to swim. Sunny imagines Mari saving him, but it was actually Hiro. This moment shows that he still remembers the past even though he doesn't want to remember it. But Hiro, Sunny, and Kel go to Sunny's house to say goodbye since he's moving soon. They'll decide to have one last sleepover at Sunny's house. Hiro gets to the piano room where Mari used to play. Hiro decides to play a song on the piano. He plays and then he asks Sunny if he still plays violin, which gets no response as Sunny doesn't talk. He also mentions he remembers a song he used to play with Mari, which you will hear later at the end of this game. After Hiro and Kel go to bed, you can find Mari's ghost inside the other bedroom in the house while the title theme plays. Sunny then goes to bed and once enters Headspace again. This time Headspace is different. No one is here except for Mari, who is also looking for everyone. She asks Omori to help find them, and at one point you will get to a massive curtain. Mari begins floating and she becomes the ghost version of her. She says that she really misses Sunny and then disappears. This is the first time Sunny's name has been mentioned in Headspace. There's a whirlpool beneath where Mari disappeared. Nothing of note really happens until the end. There are 6 messages that will appear. All of them talks about what they call the truth. When you get to the end, something will want the group to complete a hangman game they've been slowly completing throughout this entire game. Once you do the key spell out, welcome to Black Space. Once you spell it, you will walk through Basil's flower garden for one last time. Basil narrates over the scene, and this is the last Headspace scene. It's a pretty good send-off. I'll just play the clip for you guys. That's the second time Sunny has been mentioned in Headspace, and it's symbolizing how Sunny is trying to run away and it's not working. The escape has worked up until he started to actually go outside and interact with people. Anyway, when you follow Basil, he jumps into a hole similar to the one Omori jumped through when he got to that dark library. When they jump down, the only person who lands is Omori, and he finds Mara's dead body in her casket, and this happens. Omori finds a black door in stark contrast to the white door that he used to enter Headspace. When he goes through the door, he is in black space. There are doors everywhere. The music is very loud and abrupt and eerie. All the doors have different things in them. When Omori enters the first door, the stranger will taunt him about creating the world, as this is Omori, but Sunny's essentially controlling Omori, so the strangers will taunt Sunny a few more times before you begin to find Basil in the rooms, and you kill him over and over and over. At one point, there is a red door and it leads to a church. Omori enters, and in the front there is an entrance to some red area. Basil asks Omori to forgive him, and this place opens up. There is a massive red space. When Omori progresses, he finds Basil, who begs Omori to tell the hands to stop. He doesn't, and they crush him, killing him. When Omori goes up, he finds a throne made out of these stone hands. He sits on the throne, and we cut back to Sunny, who wakes up in the middle of the night. He gets up and sees Kel is the only one sleeping and Hiro had left. The title theme plays just like last time. Sunny goes to the piano room and sees Mari's ghost once again. We learn that she's the one playing the title music, and it is what her and Sunny were going to play at the recital before her death. She tells Sunny she knows that he hates how she'd lock herself in the piano room and practice, confirming what Omori read in the library was true. Mari blames herself for pushing him too hard because she just wanted it to be perfect, and they never got to do the recital. She then asks Sunny if they wanted to play the song now. Before that happens, Hiro enters the room and she disappears. Hiro swears he heard some music and that he misses Mari and thinks about her every day. He doesn't get why she killed herself. He then says Sunny should get some rest, so he does. When he wakes up, he sees that Hiro has made breakfast. We learn later in the game that before Mari died, she wanted him to be a chef, and after she passed away, he gave up on that. Him making breakfast shows that he's beginning to get over her death, but while they are eating, Aubrey's friends come over to Sunny's house and notify Kel, Hiro, and Sunny that Aubrey isn't answering. So they go to her house, and Kel remarks that they have never been in Aubrey's house, so when they go in there, they're probably surprised to learn that she does not have the best parents or upbringing. If you look around, there's just trash and bottles everywhere, showing her home life wasn't the best. They find her in the attic, and we learn that she stole some of the photos from the photo album, specifically the ones with Mari, because they are the last thing she has of her. They put all the photos back in the photo album, and even though there's still one missing, looking through the photo album, Aubrey begins to feel bad. She apologizes, and everybody accepts her apology. They decide to go to Basil's house so they can show him the finished photo album. When they arrive, they learn that Basil's grandma is sick and he's visiting her, so they go back to Omori's house and they decide to go to their old tree house. On the way there, they find the tree Mari hung herself from, and they talk about that day and where they were when that happened, as it was the day of Sunny and Mari's recital. Cal, Aubrey, and Hiro were getting prepared, and Sunny was doing nothing of interest. He was not doing anything at all. All of them are still pretty confused why she killed herself, but Hiro suggests that they move along, and it was getting to be too much for him. While they are inside the treehouse, they find the last picture and put it in the photo. Also on the back of the photo, there is a key to it with the words, "Don't forget it's in the tray box." The four friends look through the photo album. This scene is pretty sad, knowing what happened to Mari and also knowing what actually happened to Mari when you replay the game. We also find out that Hiro and Mari were in a relationship, which makes sense because you also learn they were friends since they were little kids and that they were the two oldest in the friend group. That also adds a lot to Hiro's character, as he seems incredibly heartbroken by her, as they all do, but especially him since he thinks about it every day, even 4 years later. The music during this scene too gives a sense of nostalgia and the sense of childhood and happiness that this photo album perfectly encapsulates, but these times are never coming. Aubrey is overwhelmed with emotion and she bursts out the room, going back to that tree Mari hung herself from. Aubrey puts a small homemade windmill thing on it. I don't know what these are called. She talks about how alone she was after all that happened. She talks about how everybody drifted away. She's then embraced by her friends, showing that she isn't alone and there are people who care about her. Everyone goes back to Basil's house and his caretaker asks them to go talk to Basil because he's locked himself in his room and refuses to talk. They attempt to get Basil out of his isolation and he doesn't respond, so all of them decide they're sleeping over. The scene of them all sleeping gives a nice vibe. Today was a good day, one of the first ones Sunny has had in like 4 years. The friend group is back together. Things will never be the same, but as close as it could get. And now, time for the massive twist that just changes everything. Sunny wakes up in the same white space he's been waking up as Omori. This is where he'd usually head to Headspace. You can even interact with Omori here. But instead of heading to Headspace, Sunny breaks the light bulb and it leads him into fighting something until he fights Mari's hanged body. You go to the tree she was hung by and you find Basil there. Basil says, "The truth of the day will be hard to accept. When you see it, you have to stay strong and if you can, please forgive me." You obtain his photo album. Then in that little talk, it feels more like him talking to the player than talking to Sunny. Then you get to the big twist. You collect a bunch of photographs in all these different rooms, and then you see them in chronological order. And that's the big twist. It's why Sunny wanted to escape, because he killed Mari. That's what all these confusing random cutscenes were scattered throughout the game was for. That's why Basil seems so traumatized. That's what that thing following Sunny throughout the game was. The twist is one of the better ones I've seen. It changes everything, but it doesn't feel random, as it is hinted at multiple times throughout the game. And it makes you playing, or for me, I'm like rewatching. I'm like, whatever. It makes that so much better. Sunny wakes up and enters Basil's room. Basil starts coping with what happened that day, saying something was behind him that pushed him, and that he would never do something like that. He's not accepting that he made a mistake, and that mistake happened to cost Mari her life. Sunny attempts to leave, and Basil begins getting infuriated. Shadowy vines clash around him, and something behind Sunny forces him to fight Basil. His heart rate gets higher and higher with every attack. He's extremely stressed out. Him and Basil continue attacking each other until Basil slashes Sunny's eye, knocking him out. He sees himself in the middle of the road, and he goes outside of his house and sees Basil. Basil apologizes to Sunny. He expresses his insecurities of being a burden to him, and how he only feels guilt and pain. He tells Sunny to keep the photo album and to protect it and all the memories inside of it. He says a few more things before leaving and coming back to give him one last hug and asks him to make some new memory. When Sunny enters his room, he hears the song that him and Mari were going to play at the recital the day everything went wrong. He enters to the piano room and he sees Mari yet again. Mari tells Sunny that he made a mistake and that she forgives him, that he needs to forgive himself. She also reminds him about the key to the toy box where his broken violin is hidden. We get yet another beautiful scene where Sunny runs down the rainy street remembering all the good times before Mari's passing. All these memories are based on Basil's photo album, as he told Sunny in their final confrontation to hold on to these memories and the times he remembered. There is the treehouse, the beach, the picnic, the rain, Basil's birthday, and Christmas where Sunny received his violin. The scene is pretty sad because he's remembering everything back before everything went wrong, when things were happy and before Mari died. The soundtrack during these scenes is really amazing, capturing like the heartwarming feels of these memories, and it's pretty sad remembering how it all ends. Anyway, Sunny enters the room where the recital was supposed to take place, and he imagined his friends giving him words of encouragement for what he did, and they ask him to play the violin. He does, and breaks down crying before being teleported to white space where you see Omori and you begin the boss fight with him. The music during this fight is amazing. It's super emotional. It's played all by the violin, and also how it functions is really cool. You keep attacking continuously and he does not succumb. Every time he gets more and more bloody, and eventually the background turns to where his story ended off last time you see him. Throughout the boss fight, he hurls insults at Sunny such as "you should die, you're selfish." He lists everybody who loved Mari, including Sunny, and how he killed her. He calls him useless and that his friends will hate him as much as he does when they learn. These are all things that Sunny tells himself, and defeating Mori, he's letting go of these emotions until the final time he doesn't succumb. The game asks if you want to continue, and this is where you can choose what ending you want. If you say no, you don't, you get what I would say is the inferior ending, where Sunny just killed himself by jumping off the top of a high building. That ending is just alright, but the ending, if you choose to continue, is amazing. Sunny gets up and begins playing his violin, which reminds him of what could have happened with Mari at that recital, and I'll just play the scene. Out of all the amazing scenes in this game, this one is probably my favorite. How it captures how great the game is. It showcases the highlights of their life, and you know how it ends, and how this all comes to an abrupt stop because of one mistake. Then it shows what could have been with them at their recital. This scene is just absolutely amazing. It has everything I would want for a scene like this. But anyway, the game isn't over yet. That's after that scene, we see Omori and Sunny hug each other. Omori drops his knife and disappears. This is symbolizing Sunny letting go of his escape and embracing real life. He wakes up in the hospital from his wounds he obtained during his fight with Basil, and he finally lets himself cry. This is the first time outside of combat Sunny's face actually has an expression on it, showing that he's letting go of Omori and becoming his own person. Sunny goes to the room that Basil is in, and on his way he sees his headspace friends leave. He goes to Basil, and he goes to the opposite direction and visits Basil's room with all of his friends, and for the first time in 4 years he speaks, saying, "I have something to tell you." Then the game ends. I think it's such a good ending because we don't need to see how his friends reacted to it. We just need to know he told them. This ending is truly spectacular, and it's so much better than the other one. This entire game is just a triumph in storytelling. It gives deep and compelling story about loss, grief, regret, escapism, and depression. This entire story is just perfect. It's up there with with video game stories like Last of Us and the Red Dead games. That's how good the story is. It also is so unique. No story is quite like this one. It takes a lot of risks and breaks a lot of rules. It's just so amazing. Also, the characters are so good. It somehow makes you care for a silent protagonist. You feel really bad, and it's sad to see how they turned out. It's sad to see how they turned out after the loss of somebody close to them. Hero is a really nice guy who had to suffer so much. Aubrey annoyed me most of the game, and then towards the end of the game, especially with that scene with the tree, her character is way better. Kel is really kind of funny, but you can tell there's a sadness to him. And then there's Sunny, who you feel really bad for as he lost his sister and he's grieving and all of that. Then it drops one of the best plot twists in gaming on you, and it makes you feel so conflicted because it's messed up he did it, but at the same time it was a genuine accident. It's just one of the best stories in gaming in my opinion. It's so unique. And now that that lengthy section is over, let's get into my Omori is one of the best games I've ever played. It has one of the best stories in gaming. It uses colors and sound to evoke so many emotions, and it tackles these themes in an amazing way. It makes you feel very bad for the characters, and none of them deserved what they got, but with that, it's pretty realistic. Everyone makes mistakes, and sometimes they can even be fatal, and I love how the game doesn't tell you exactly what it means, which is also realistic, because most of the time a person would spell out exactly what they're saying. Just everything about this game except for the gameplay, and one of the endings is great. It's a perfect 10 out of 10 in my opinion, and it's up there with my favorite games of all time, like the Last of Us games and the newest God of War games.